Hi, I'm Ariel. You're watching She Wants the Diction, and today I'm going to be reviewing Happy People Are Annoying by Josh Peck. So I finished this book over the period of about 2 days, and I ended up giving it 3.5 stars out of 5, which I know half-star ratings are kind of weird, but bear with me because there's a reason for it. As soon as I heard that Josh Peck had a book out, I got really excited, and obviously I wanted to read it, and I immediately put it on hold. I feel like if you're a millennial, then you probably grew up with the show Drake and Josh, and so yeah, that was like one of the few shows that I was allowed to watch growing up. And so I just had such an attachment and a nostalgia to it. Josh in that show was kind of known for his like over-the-top, dramatic, just like freaking out kind of style and this like energy that he brings. And I think a lot of us are like really like attached to that, and we enjoy that like ridiculousness. So I was pretty curious about his life. I did not follow him like from the Vine days, but I do remember a few years ago discovering that he was on YouTube, and so I did watch him there briefly for a bit. And I also tried to listen to a few episodes of his podcast, but I found them to be super like long-winded, as in like hours and hours with minimal to no editing. And so I just found his podcast like kind of unbearable. So in this book, I feel like he kind of explains not only his entire like life background, like growing up in New York, growing up poor, with no father, and all the things that he like kind of struggled with. He also talks about his career trajectory and how difficult it was for him to find work later. Like basically he lost a bunch of the weight, and then he got like into drugs and alcohol, which is pretty common for like child stars. But I was really impressed by how honest he was about his struggles like throughout the book. I guess I just didn't really expect him to like go into that much detail, because it seems like he is pretty private, like aside from like the jokes and stuff like that. But so by some miracle, he was able to keep his public image pretty clean though. And again, I was just really impressed with how honest he was about all of his struggles, especially the dad thing. Like he talks about how it's just like a pivotal part of his identity that he never met his dad and didn't really know who his dad was, and was raised by a single mother. But it's also really sad when you think about like a 15-year-old kid feeling like in order to get him and his mom out of this poverty and this bad situation that they were in, that he needed to like be a success, and he needed to be good at acting, and he just had all this weight on him from such a young age. And I really liked the way he opened the book up with talking about like trauma and basically how like trauma jacks us all up. I do feel like honestly a lot of millennials, the struggle that we have is like navigating the traumas that like our parents didn't really deal with or didn't know how to deal with, and like making sure that we work through that for ourselves and not passing it along to the next generation. So he's like 35, so as somebody that's slightly older than me, I just found that like, I don't know, super relatable. The fact of him not having a dad, this is something that can mess you up almost as much as if you do have a dad and it's not a great dad, like for example myself. So I just thought that was an interesting perspective. Like just because your dad's not there doesn't mean you can't have like wounding and attachment from that. So I think he was parentified and adultified at a super young age. He doesn't really call it an eating disorder, but he does talk about his struggles with using food and consuming food as a coping mechanism. Like I feel like this could definitely be classified as like binge eating disorder or something like that, or at the very least emotional eating, but he doesn't call it that, which I'm not sure if that's just like a masculinity type ego sort of thing. But I do think anytime that a male is talking about eating disorders, it's not as prevalent in our society to see men talking about that and body image issues as it is for women. So I really liked that he did that. And he also makes some caveats about, you know, the body positivity movement. Like if he's basically saying if you're comfortable with your body, then like that's cool. It's just I was not, and I pretty much had to deal with like people talking about my weight all the time, and this was the 90s, so it wasn't like politically correct like it is today and stuff. And he was just talking about how it basically like made his life a living hell. Like he didn't want to be the weight that he was. So he talks a lot in here about his low self-esteem, and then the drug addiction that he went through once he forced himself to lose a lot of the weight, and then how unhealthy and out of control that got. And he goes to AA, and he's now been, I believe it's 13 years sober since writing this book. So he talks about the AA meetings and all that did for him. Again, with the caveat, I really like the caveats that he has in here, that AA is not something that's for absolutely everyone, but it did work for him. And he doesn't go into like details, but we know for a fact that he did a lot of cocaine. Obviously with actors and stuff, people assume that because they're famous and well-liked and well-known that, you know, they have everything you could ever want. They have like popularity, they have money, they have, you know, family, fame, whatever. But even still, you know, it just seems like Josh has been through a lot. And while I've never specifically been a Jewish child actor struggling with my weight, I just found it super relatable in so many ways. I think because of the like self-esteem issues, the feeling justified in just like, you know, doing drugs, turning up, drinking, whatever I want, like this is my time now. Like when you have a responsibility placed on you so young, like even if it's unspoken or unsaid and there's all these expectations, and then later you grow up and you just want to like get away from all that. Like I feel like kids who had to grow up being super hyper responsible mini adults, so many of us go through that phase of just like losing our minds, and I feel like that was super relatable. Now, some things I did not like about this book were the abundant comma splices. Like, and I know this is a super grammar nerdy thing to be upset about, but I mean, he writes the way that he talks, so I can definitely see the audiobook probably as being better than reading the text. But I was really just disappointed that he didn't have an editor to edit out a lot of the comma splices and make them separate sentences, because literally I had to ignore one almost every second in order to get through the book. There were some kind of like off-color, sort of out-of-touch remarks that he makes throughout the book that I wasn't really digging, but they're all really subtle. Not like anything huge or like, oh no, Josh is a bad person or anything like that. But like he talks about when he has to get super fit for a movie, and he talks about these guys are in the gym that are training him, or like probably the guys that killed bin Laden. Like obviously this is a joke, but it's like, you know, 9/11 was a real thing that happened. I don't know that it's necessarily funny that like we killed people. Even I don't know. It just rubs me the wrong way. And then another similar thing is how he says some joke about he's not the next Shia LaBeouf, and I was just like, I could see this book being written maybe before all the stuff came out about Shia LaBeouf like abusing FKA twigs, but maybe find someone to compare yourself to that isn't abusing their girlfriend and like known for doing that like repeatedly. You know what I mean? Like there were just some times that I wish the editors had like tweaked this or like taken it out. You know what I mean? Because it wasn't vital. But I do see that maybe they were trying not to like damage his authenticity, because it does come across as very authentic. I wish he'd written more about how he met his wife, and also a little bit more about his son, which he does talk about his son a little bit towards the end of the book. But I still appreciate what he revealed here. It was honestly more than I expected, and was a lot of his life story and like what drove him. And it's just interesting how he views Drake and Josh totally differently from most of us. Like I think most of us growing up like really like the show and we have positive feelings about it, and you know, we enjoy it because Josh is a funny person. But when he sees like memes and stuff from the show, it just reminds him of what it was pretty much the worst time in his life. Like he felt like he was, you know, overweight, and he was just a star on a niche kids show, and then really couldn't get much work after that, which was partially due to his own self-sabotage of like, you know, drugs and alcohol and wasting jobs and different things like that. But it just reminds him of pretty much the worst time in his life. So like we look at that and see, you know, Josh is like a funny and he's energetic, but he sees it as, you know, I was the butt of the joke for so long and people were laughing at me. And I just feel like he sees it totally differently to like the way that the audience sees it, which is super interesting. And I mean, it kind of makes sense, but at the same time, I don't think we were ever thinking Josh is that funny fat kid. Like he just was funny and we were kids and we didn't really care what he looked like, you know what I mean? But I just admire his perseverance like in his career. When he realized that he couldn't get the acting jobs that he wanted, he pivoted to social media and building up a business there. And through Vine, which he kind of explains as a combination of just good timing and luck, and also all the practice he'd already had before from watching so much television growing up, studying acting. It was one of the ways that he could escape a situation. Like a lot of the things that he talks about, like acting, watching TV, eating, a lot of those things were things he was doing to try to escape his trauma. So it's really inspiring that everything in his life is kind of built around what he was doing to try to escape the bad situation that he was in, and he became a success story. Now maybe not the Hollywood star of being the leading man, the most handsome, the most jacked, whatever in the room, but he has accomplished a level of success that like he is personally fulfilled and happy with. He even talks about humbling himself, that he didn't really do the work to like be an actor once he got to be an adult. He was kind of coasting on the little bit of talent and the chance that he was given, you know, when he was a kid, and he had to go back and relearn how to like really act. And like he always wanted to do serious roles. He always wanted to be perceived as this leading man type, but he was always just the funny best friend, or, you know, like sort of typecast for these certain roles where he didn't feel like he was playing a role. He felt like he was playing just a version of himself. It's obvious that he just has such a passion for what he does, like performing and making people laugh, and that's like so pure. Like I just love that. I love the overall positive message of the book, and that this is what he's choosing to use his platform for. I believe that if I had read the audiobook again, I would have rated it higher, probably 4 out of 5 stars. But overall, if you're just looking for a quick little read, like a nice little celebrity memoir, you know, that's somewhat funny and very honest, cut to the point, I would recommend this one. If you found my review interesting or helpful, please consider hitting subscribe, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Peace.